If you are over 60 and you have ever chosen your airplane seat based on price, availability, or habit, there is a very real chance you have been booking one of the worst seats on the plane for your body and doing it on every single trip. I am Maria. I was a flight attendant for 22 years. And in this video, I'm going to tell you the exact seats to avoid, the exact seats to request, and the exact words to say to get those seats for free, even when the airline tells you they are not available. Drop a comment right now with your age and the last seat number you remember sitting in on a flight. Because what I am about to share might be the most important thing you do before you book your next trip. Most travelers over 60 pick their seat the same way they always have. They look at the seat map. They find something near the front, or something cheap, or something that is simply still open. They click it. Done. What they do not know is that the seat map they are looking at was designed with a 35-year-old frequent business traveler in mind. It was not designed for someone with lower back stiffness, circulation concerns, a bladder that does not operate on a 3-hour schedule, or knees that lock up after 40 minutes in a fixed position. Those passengers, travelers exactly like you, were never the intended user of that system, and the result is that millions of seniors are boarding planes and spending 2, 4, 6 hours in seats that are actively working against their bodies. Not because the better options do not exist, because nobody told them which seats those are. There are at least 7 seat categories that flight attendants, based on what we see in the cabin every single flight, consider genuinely problematic for passengers over 60. And there are 4 specific seat positions that we privately consider the best options for older travelers on any aircraft type. These are not upgrades you have to pay for. They are standard economy seats available on every major U.S. carrier that simply require knowing what to look for. I want to tell you about a passenger named Dorothy. She was 74 years old, a retired school teacher from Tennessee, and she flew twice a year to visit her daughter in Seattle. Dorothy always booked a middle seat toward the back of the plane because it was the cheapest option she could find, and she had decided that suffering through a flight was just the cost of seeing her family. What Dorothy did not know was that she had been systematically choosing one of the 3 worst seat types on a narrow-body aircraft for a traveler her age. A middle seat in the last 5 rows, behind the engine noise, near the lavatory queue, with a seat that does not recline because it is against the rear bulkhead. She had been doing this for 11 years, 22 flights. Not once had a booking agent, an airline website, or anyone at the airport told her there were better options at no extra cost. The system had no reason to tell her. She was already buying a ticket. Dorothy's experience is not unusual. It is the default. And it keeps happening to travelers over 60 for 3 specific reasons. First, airline seat maps show availability and price. They do not show ergonomic suitability, noise levels, proximity to lavatories, or recline restrictions. Every piece of information that would help an older traveler make a better choice is invisible in the booking interface. The system was optimized for speed of transaction, not quality of experience. Second, the seats that are genuinely best for senior travelers, aisle seats in specific rows, bulkhead positions, exit row adjacents, are often held back by airlines as preferred seating with a fee attached. What most travelers do not know is that those fees are frequently waived for loyalty members, for passengers who call rather than book online, and for passengers who request them at check-in with the right language. Third, and this is the thing I watched happen on flights for over 2 decades, senior travelers are the least likely to complain about a bad seat mid-flight, and the most likely to accept physical discomfort as a fixed condition of flying. That patience, which is a genuine virtue, works against them in the booking process. Airlines have no data showing that this passenger population is suffering in specific seat types. They are not suffering loudly, so nothing changes. Before we go further, hit that like button right now if you have ever gotten off a plane with back pain, swollen ankles, or a stiff neck, and wondered whether the seat had something to do with it. It helps us reach more senior travelers who need this information. And subscribe, because I share these insider details every week. Here is the core principle you need to understand before I give you the specific seats to avoid. Aircraft cabins are not symmetrical in experience. Two seats in the same row can produce dramatically different physical outcomes over a 4-hour flight, based on proximity to lavatory traffic, engine vibration frequency, underseat storage obstruction, seat pitch compression, and recline availability. The seat map you see online shows you none of this. What I am giving you is 22 years of watching how different passengers respond to different positions in the cabin. For travelers over 60, this information is the difference between arriving rested and arriving wrecked. The 4 words that protect you in every seat selection conversation are, what is actually available, not, can I have a better seat, which sounds like a complaint requiring justification. Not, this seat isn't good for me, which positions you as a problem without a solution. Not, I need an upgrade, which triggers a fee conversation immediately. Just, what is actually available. It signals that you are informed, that you know held inventory exists, and that you are asking a professional to look beyond the public seat map. Check-in agents and phone agents respond to this differently than they respond to generic requests, because it tells them you already know the answer is not nothing. The first seat to never book. Any middle seat in rows 25 through the last row on a narrow-body aircraft. Say this when you call to change it. I booked a middle seat toward the rear of the aircraft, and I am calling to ask what aisle options are actually available, including any preferred or standard seats that may have opened up. I travel with some circulation concerns, and I would appreciate your help finding something better. Here is what is happening in those last rows that most passengers do not realize. The rear of a narrow-body aircraft, any Boeing 737 or Airbus A320 family plane, experiences significantly more engine and turbulence vibration than the front 2/3 of the cabin. The seats in the last 4 to 6 rows on most configurations do not recline, because they are directly in front of the rear bulkhead or the lavatory partition. The lavatory queue forms in the aisle beside these rows on every flight over 2 hours, meaning you have passengers standing next to your seat, sometimes leaning on your headrest for extended periods. And the middle seat in these rows offers no escape. You cannot get up easily. You are compressed between 2 strangers. You cannot extend your legs without hitting the seat in front. For a traveler with any lower back sensitivity, knee stiffness, or circulation concern, this configuration compounds every one of those issues over the duration of the flight. A 69-year-old retired pharmacist named Gloria from Ohio had been booking these seats for 6 years because they were consistently the lowest price on her airline's basic economy fare. She called the airline after watching a video about cabin positioning and used almost exactly this language. The agent found an aisle seat in row 14, a standard economy seat that had been held as preferred seating, and moved her at no charge because her loyalty number showed she had flown the airline 14 times in 4 years. Gloria said it was the first flight in recent memory where she did not need 2 days to recover from the trip. The seat had cost her nothing extra. The information had cost her 6 years. The second seat to avoid, any seat directly in front of the exit row. I noticed my seat is directly in front of an exit row. I understand those seats don't recline. Can you check whether there is a comparable aisle or window seat available in a row where the seat functions normally? Exit rows exist to provide emergency egress. The seats directly in front of them cannot recline because reclining into an exit row blocks passenger evacuation. Airlines are required to keep that space clear. What this means for you as a passenger is simple. You will spend the entire flight in a fully upright seat, with no ability to shift your lumbar position, no ability to reduce pressure on your lower spine, and no ability to create the small positional changes that prevent the muscle fatigue and joint stiffness that build up over any flight longer than 90 minutes. For a traveler over 60 with any back sensitivity at all, this is a medically meaningful distinction, not a comfort preference. A 71-year-old retired nurse named Helen from Georgia had selected one of these seats specifically because she liked having extra legroom in front of her, which exit row adjacents sometimes offer. What she did not know was that the non-reclining limitation would cancel any benefit of the extra space for a passenger with her history of lower back discomfort. When she used this script at the gate on her next flight, the gate agent checked the system, found a standard aisle seat 2 rows forward, and moved her before boarding began. Helen boarded, reclined 2 inches 40 minutes into the flight, and later described it as the first long-haul domestic flight where she did not stand up stiff. The third seat to avoid: any window seat if you have any bladder frequency concerns, take a diuretic, or simply prefer not to climb over strangers. I need to make sure I have aisle access throughout the flight for medical reasons. Can you confirm my seat is an aisle? And if not, what aisle seats are available in any cabin section right now? This one sounds obvious until you realize how many senior travelers book window seats out of habit, because they always liked looking out, because the view felt comforting, because that is just what they have always done. The problem is that a window seat on a 4-hour flight, with 2 passengers between you and the aisle, creates a psychological and sometimes physical barrier to getting up. Travelers in window seats are significantly less likely to stand, walk, and stretch during flight than aisle travelers. For passengers over 60, extended immobility in a pressurized, low-humidity cabin environment is directly associated with swollen ankles, worsened circulation, increased joint stiffness on arrival, and in higher-risk individuals, elevated deep vein thrombosis concern. The phrase, "for medical reasons," in the script is deliberate. You do not need to elaborate. You do not need documentation. You are stating a factual condition. Every major U.S. carrier has an obligation to assist passengers with medical needs, and agents are trained to treat this language as a legitimate service request, not a negotiation. A 77-year-old retired librarian named Frances from North Carolina had flown in window seats her entire adult life. Her doctor had mentioned at a recent checkup that her ankle swelling after long flights was consistent with reduced circulation during extended sitting. Frances called her airline, used this exact language, and was moved from a window to a forward aisle seat at no charge. She wore her compression socks, stood and walked at the 90-minute mark, and arrived in Phoenix with no swelling for the first time in 3 years. 1 phone call and 1 honest sentence. The 4th seat to avoid: any seat directly beside the lavatory. Can you check whether my seat is adjacent to or directly across from a lavatory? I have sensory sensitivities, and I would like to be moved to a comparable seat that is not in that zone if anything is available. Seats adjacent to lavatories are problematic for senior travelers for reasons that go beyond odor, which most people already understand. The lavatory area at the rear of the aircraft is a high-traffic standing zone on any flight over 2 hours. Passengers queue there. Flight attendants stage there during service. The door opens and closes repeatedly, creating noise, air disturbance, and intermittent light if you are trying to rest. The aisle beside these seats is frequently blocked, and the combination of noise, movement, and interrupted rest is particularly disruptive for travelers who need predictable sleep or quiet time to manage fatigue during travel. If you are someone who arrives at a destination and needs to feel functional, not destroyed, this seat zone is working against you on every flight. A 73-year-old retired accountant named Miriam from Florida had never thought to check where the lavatory was on the seat map. She assumed all coach seats were roughly equivalent. When she used this script on a call to her airline 2 days before a flight to Chicago, the agent confirmed her seat was literally 1 row in front of the rear lavatory cluster, apologized, and moved her to a mid-cabin aisle seat with no fee. Miriam slept for 90 minutes on the flight, something she had not been able to do on a plane in years. The fifth seat to avoid: any seat with obstructed underseat storage. Say this: can you tell me whether my seat has a full underseat storage space, or whether there is a structural box or equipment housing that reduces that area? I need to keep a medical bag accessible during the flight, and I want to confirm I have the right seat. This one is almost never discussed, and it catches senior travelers off guard more than almost anything else. On most commercial aircraft, certain seats, particularly window seats in rows near exit doors and some bulkhead-adjacent positions, have a structural box under the seat in front of them. This box contains emergency equipment, electronic systems, or structural supports. It reduces underseat storage by 30 to 60%, and it also reduces the space available for your feet and lower legs. On a short flight, this is uncomfortable. On a 4-hour flight, for a traveler with circulation concerns, swollen feet, or limited flexibility, this is genuinely painful. Airlines are required to disclose this on seat maps, but the notation is often a small icon that most travelers do not know to look for. A 68-year-old retired social worker named Kathleen from Michigan had spent a transatlantic flight before COVID, when she still flew internationally, with her feet compressed into a reduced underseat space that had made her lower legs ache for 2 days after landing. She had not known the box was there until she boarded. When she learned to ask this question before her next domestic flight, she discovered her booked seat had exactly this restriction. She was moved to a standard seat at no cost. She has checked underseat storage on every booking since. The sixth seat to avoid: the last seat on a plane with a fixed seat back. Say this: I would like to confirm whether my seat back reclines. I have a lower back condition that requires me to be able to adjust my position during the flight. If my current seat does not recline, I would appreciate help finding one that does. We covered non-reclining seats in the context of exit row adjacents, but this issue extends beyond that single zone. On many aircraft, the very last row of the aircraft, sometimes rows 30 through 33 on a 737, sometimes the final 2 rows on a regional jet, have fixed seatbacks as a structural feature of the aircraft itself. These seats are often sold at full price. They are not marked clearly on basic booking sites, and they are disproportionately occupied by travelers who booked late, who booked cheap, or who simply did not know to ask. For a traveler over 60 who already deals with lumbar compression or arthritis, sitting bolt upright for 3 hours with no ability to adjust is not an inconvenience. It is a health event that takes days to recover from. A 75-year-old retired teacher named Evelyn from Arizona had booked one of these seats on a flight to visit her grandchildren because it was the last available seat on the aircraft when she booked. She did not know it did not recline until she sat down. Evelyn made it through the flight, but spent the first 2 days of her visit recovering in pain. When she called her airline afterward and described what happened, using calm and specific language, the agent noted her account, added a service preference for reclining seats to her profile, and issued a travel credit. That 4-minute call changed every booking experience she has had since. The seventh seat to avoid: any seat your booking confirmation describes as standard without specifying pitch. Before I finalize this booking, can you confirm the seat pitch, the distance between my seat and the one in front, and let me know if there are any rows on this aircraft with standard or above standard pitch that are still available. Seat pitch is the single most important number for a senior traveler's physical comfort, and it is almost never shown on booking sites. Standard economy pitch on U.S. carriers ranges from 28 inches to 34 inches depending on the airline and aircraft. A 6-inch difference that is the difference between being able to cross your legs slightly and not being able to move your knees at all. Certain rows, typically the first few rows of economy, rows near the galley, and some bulkhead positions, consistently offer more pitch than the compressed middle rows. These seats are not upgrades. They are standard economy. They just require knowing the row numbers for the specific aircraft type you are flying, which any phone agent can tell you in 30 seconds. A 70-year-old retired engineer named Robert from Virginia had been flying in compressed mid-cabin seats for years and attributed his post-flight knee pain to age. When a physical therapist mentioned that sustained knee flexion in confined spaces worsens his particular joint condition, Robert called his airline, asked this exact question, and learned that rows 10 through 14 on his specific aircraft configuration offered 4 additional inches of pitch over the seats he had been booking. He was moved to row 11. He described the flight as the first in years where he did not limp through the arrival terminal. Now, I want to be completely honest with you. These conversations do not always end with a yes on the first try. Sometimes the seat you need genuinely is not available. Sometimes the agent is working through a difficult shift. Here is what to do when the answer is still no. Step 1. Ask one more person immediately. Walk to the gate. Speak to the gate agent rather than the check-in counter. Gate agents have access to inventory that opens up in the final hour before departure. Seats that were held for premium passengers who did not show. Seats that were blocked for operational reasons and then released. Seats that became available when passengers upgraded. The gate is where last-minute seat changes happen most often. And gate agents, in my experience, are the most empowered people in the airport to make them happen quickly. Step 2. Call the airline the day after a bad seat experience, not to complain, but to ask one specific question. Is there a way to note my seating needs on my profile so that agents can see them when I book future flights? That question almost always results in a service note being added to your loyalty account. A note that flags your seating requirements every time you book, making future calls faster and more likely to succeed. A 67-year-old retired principal named Judith from Texas had been told at check-in that no aisle seats were available on her flight. She walked to the gate, asked the gate agent the same question, using the same calm language, and was moved to an aisle seat in row 8, a premium economy adjacent position, 12 minutes before boarding. Judith has flown 6 times since. She has not sat in a middle seat once